Trump is not due back in court until December, but, a lot can happen between now and then.
Joining us now, one of his attorneys, Joe Tacopina. Nice to have you back on Good Day New York.
Thanks, Rosanna. Thanks, Bianca.
So, Joe, let's talk about the felony counts, because I was watching all the pundits on every station last night, and everybody came down to the same conclusion. They didn't see how this warranted felony charges, yet the Manhattan DA says he's got new evidence. Do you know what the new evidence is, and when does he have to give it to you?
He doesn't have new evidence. It's spinning. And look, if he had new evidence, he would have listed it in the indictment. What he didn't put in the indictment was the underlying crime that these alleged false business records were intended to cover up. It just said another crime. I mean, it could have been anything, right? Legally, he doesn't have to put it in the indictment, but he should have put it in the indictment, because he's been, talking about this case in his office, and all his leakers have been talking about this case for months, about how strong it is. And that indictment, I think, further solidified the belief that there's nothing more than a political persecution, the weaponizing of the justice system.
So let me ask you something. Sometimes it's easier to take a plea deal than it is to go through the trial. It's going to be a very expensive and lengthy trial. Will the former president take a plea deal?
Rosanna, there's one thing in life I can guarantee you, aside from taxes and death, I guess, is that Donald Trump will never take a plea in this case. This is not a case that's going to be resolved by plea. This case should be dismissed on papers, because there's insufficiency in the charges, in the law. There's a misapplication of the law. We're talking about a federal election campaign issue, and the laws therein, being charged by a state prosecutor, when federal election officials did not charge Donald Trump or indicate there was any wrongdoing. The Justice Department, who has jurisdiction, actually did not charge Donald Trump. So this case is not going to survive, I don't think, a legal challenge.
But he's saying he's got new evidence.
Honestly reviewed.
He's got new evidence, Joe. That's what he said. Or is that lawyer talk 101?
Did he say what it was, or is it just is this a game of peekaboo? We have new evidence. I know what their evidence is. They don't have new evidence. It's the same thing. It's this Stormy Daniels settlement agreement, paying for civil settlements to prevent embarrassing stories, which he adamantly denies, from coming out publicly. That happens every day in any city in this country. In every law office in this country, civil settlements are resolved. He didn't pay with campaign funds. And he wasn't obligated to report it to the FEC. He didn't take a tax deduction. He couldn't have done anything more right in this case, yet somehow he's indicted. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, who pays for a Steele dossier during the campaign, which is dirt digging on an opponent, which is legal, I guess, from a campaign standpoint, her campaign paid for that. But they marked it as legal fees. Sound familiar? Yeah. And she got a fine. But Donald Trump gets indicted by using personal funds to pay a lawyer.
You're saying, I know a lot of people on one side of the aisle saying the legal application is not being applied fairly to him, or what it is to, the people on the other side of the aisle. But I want to ask you, because we just talked to Peter Frankel. He was saying that you may not get all this evidence until maybe about 2 months from now.
Well, what has to happen first is we're working out a protective order on some of the documents and the evidence that can't be disseminated, which is totally fair and we agree with. We're just working out the language for that. Once we have that evidence, it won't be, I don't think it'll be 2 months, but we'll start working on our motions. We have a slew of motions that we're already thinking about. Obviously, we need to get all the discovery, all the evidence, and really dissect everything. Yeah. And understand really what they're trying to say the underlying crime was, although we have a sneaking suspicion it's campaign law violations. Once we have that, we'll start making motions. Motions to dismiss are coming. Yeah. Motions for selective prosecution are clearly coming. Prosecutorial misconduct, those are coming.
And possibly,
Alan Bragg, I watched the video last night that made me, let me just say that I watched the video last night that actually made the hair on my neck stand up. It was Alan Bragg campaigning for district attorney, and he went on a radio show, and the question was, are you going to convict Donald Trump? Okay, that's a little presumptuous, but that was the question. Instead of Alan Bragg saying, well, I don't know, I'd have to look at the evidence objectively and fairly, he said that's issue number one. Great. So before he's even a prosecutor with access to all these different things and evidence that he says he has, issue number one was convicting Donald Trump. I think that speaks volumes.
Well, it's interesting, though, because when we're looking at Bragg's conviction rate, I mean, in his first year, I think he downgraded 52% of felonies to misdemeanors. And then of that, 51% were actually convicted.
Yeah, it's the Manhattan District Attorney's Office was a different place years ago. Bob Morgenthau, when he was the district attorney, legendary Bob Morgenthau, you know, that office was considered the pinnacle of prosecutors' offices on a state level in this country. Not so much right now. I mean, that conviction rate is alarming. I was a prosecutor. I mean, you're supposed to win most of your cases as a prosecutor. That's an alarming rate. And then when you see what happens here, it's literally the opposite of what his office has been doing, downgrading all these violent felonies to misdemeanors. Instead, he's taking misdemeanors that would be well past the statute of limitations. He couldn't even bring them, cobbling them together to try and make a felony. So he's upgrading time-barred misdemeanors to make a felony. It's everything about this case is just wrong.
So let's talk about Mr. Trump and his demeanor yesterday. A lot of people said he was very soft-spoken in court, not the usual Donald Trump demeanor. He tweeted about that it was surreal going into the courthouse yesterday. Has reality hit for him? What has he said to you going forward?
No, I mean, it was Donald Trump yesterday. He was a very classy individual who classy in this sense. He was subdued in court in the sense that he didn't speak in court. He's not supposed to. Other than saying not guilty, he wasn't that subdued when he said that. I mean, he was stoic. He sat there. He didn't make any moves, faces, statements. He acted perfectly appropriately. Obviously, anyone going through something like this shouldn't be happy, shouldn't be waving and smiling. So of course it's a somber moment when you're being falsely accused. Look, this prosecutor has politicized his office, clearly. If he was not running for president, there's no way these charges are brought. If his name was not Donald Trump but John Smith, there is no chance we're having this discussion today about an arraignment yesterday. But here we are. And he understands that, and that's why he's so angry, because the justice system's been weaponized, and that's a big concern. Look, Congress is involved here. The House Judiciary Oversight Committee has subpoenaed Bragg and is asking for documents because they're investigating this, because they say that this is, to them, pretty obvious weaponization of the criminal justice system.
But Joe, let me ask you something. You know, he is facing court cases all over the country. You know, at some point, does he say, I just don't have the stamina for this, I'm going to pull out of the race and just focus on the court? I mean, every which way, Georgia this way. I mean, how can you continue to go on like this?
He's like an extraterrestrial. I mean, I don't know. He is different. He's the toughest guy I know. His knees do not buckle. He seems to get more emboldened, more strong as false allegations come his way, as the weaponization of the justice system points at him. He's not going anywhere, Rosanna. I mean, if you look at what's happened since he's been indicted a week ago, it's sort of daunting. Most people who are in an election or running a campaign, get indicted. They withdraw from the race with a heartfelt speech. They disappear from public eye and never to be heard from again. Donald Trump, on the other hand, gets indicted. His poll numbers go skyrocketing up. He gets $7 million in 3 days in campaign donations from people who are outraged. So that's, you know, he plays by a different playbook, and it seems to work for him.
Well, I know you mentioned that he was classy yesterday in the courtroom, but a lot of people might say he wasn't very classy on Twitter or, you know, in social media, saying that he has a Trump-hating judge, that his wife is Trump-hating, that the family was, and the judge did tell Trump, you know, refrain from making comments that could jeopardize the safety or well-being of any individuals. Well, what did you talk to him about this? Maybe say, cool it down on the social media stuff?
No. I'm not his social media advisor. I'm not his PR advisor. I'm his lawyer. He didn't say anything. The key that the judge says, please do not, and he was talking to both sides. The witnesses, you know, who give press conferences daily from the prosecution, he was talking to both sides by saying, don't do or say anything that could incite violence, you know, and certainly nothing Donald Trump did yesterday or said yesterday incited violence. I'm sure many of his enemies were very disappointed yesterday that there were only peaceful protests outside that courthouse. The whole city was locking down for what was going to be, you know, a riot or something, and there was absolutely not one event. As far as how he conducts himself on social media, that's his opinion. That the judge doesn't like him. His news came out, not from Donald Trump, from others, that the judge's daughter works for the Vice President, Kamala Harris. You know, when you feel like you're being victimized and by the system, when you feel like there's a political vendetta being enacted against you, when you have a far left prosecutor who's going after a political opponent on charges that would never be brought against anyone else in this country, yeah, you get the opinion that people are not playing fair in the sandbox and that they're against you. So that's his opinion. He's entitled to it, but he certainly didn't say or post anything that would be in violation of the judge's request. It wasn't an order, it was a request, and the judge made a perfectly appropriate request. And nothing Donald Trump has done has violated that.
So, Joe, what happens today? Does Mr. Trump go play golf? Like, what happens? What does he do?
He's on a campaign right now, apparently. So, you know, he does what he does Trump. I don't know. I get to work. You know, I have another trial for him coming up in April that I have to get going on and, you know, really put my attention to. And then we'll eventually do the motions and, you know, make some substantial and really intense legal challenges to the sufficiency of the charges here, the legal charges. So I think we'll be focused on that for the next 4 months. And, you know, we're not back in court until December, thank God, so we can get some work done.
Joe Tacopina, always appreciate talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on Good Day New York.
Thank you, guys.